Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for Celeb Summer Experience. This event itself only requires Fuyuki completion, meaning new players can go pretty much straight into it. But it's followed closely by Archetype Inception, which requires you to clear the ordeal called Prologue. So if you haven't completed the 7 Lost Belts yet, you really want to keep going if you're close to finishing. But if you're nowhere close or feeling lazy, no worries. This event and the, surprise attached to it become main interludes and permanent respectively, around February of next year. Because Celeb Summer Experience is essentially foreplay for Archetype Inception, it's mechanically quite simple. You do free quests to get currency and buy copies of Fanned by the Twilight Wind in the shop. It's an ignore defense CE with a full attack investment, so if you don't already have one of those, it's a nice-to-have option in your toolkit. In this event, it also amplifies your tourism points. For swift event progression, keep individual copies separate and equip them all at once. Then you go back to the free quests and keep doing those until you unlock special tourism quests. These are one-off nodes that give you joy counterpoints. These in turn gate event main quest progression along with the usual time gates. This event is released piecemeal over 10 days. Clearing main quest segments unlocks new free quests and the cycle continues. Pretty simple. The point ladder also gives you command codes and copies of Superb Vista's Sublime Artistry. This is the event damage CE, and it'll make things very easy. While its non-event stats won't be super appealing to endgame players, it does have a full attack investment, hybrid arts buster buffs, and P damage, and starting charge. So it's actually a very solid filler CE for new players until they get more specialized craft essences. As for the codes, Funny Vamp gives anti-chaotic damage and NP gain. It's nice to have in general, but for someone who can control which cards they draw, like CL, you can abuse this to increase your upper end damage against enemies like, say, Beowulf. Just a random example. KMR 3000 MH, aka Suzuka's motorcycle, dumps out 3 stars, and Lady U Doll gives a small curse to enemies and a heal for its user on hit. All of these are situationally useful, so I'd say they're worth grabbing. Before I get to the higher difficulty quests, some loose ends. The shop has Karna, Percival, Bart, and CL costumes, and I must say that the Karna one looks pretty good. The point ladder notably contains those flowers you farm in Ordeal Call 2, which are almost always in short supply. Space Ereshkigal has a substantial damage and bond bonus throughout this event, so if you're looking to get mileage out of your new acquisition, now's not a bad time to get used to her charge management. Although if you're on Team Ibuki, she also has a bonus, just a tier down. Lastly, Celeb Summer Experience comes with buffs to Bunny Toria, Summer Tomoe, and Summer Ishtar. Ishtar in particular no longer breaks herself after using her 3rd skill, and has that downside replaced with a battery NP gain combo, so that's pretty nice. Farming is quite trivial with an event damage CE in play. The 90 Plus is a 3-1-3 arrangement with Lancers, but a 300k Pretender Hephaestion in Wave 3. You could brute force this with someone like Space Eresh or even CL if you really wanted to. Otherwise, a strong enough neutral Buster Servant can do the trick. Remember that Pretenders don't actually resist the Night classes, so you could just throw OG Saber at this fight and call it a day. The 90 Plus Plus is a 3-1-1 Berserker arrangement with a 500k Idiot Flying Serpent that purges your buffs in Wave 2 and a 1 million health Beowulf in Wave 3. It's a pretty good node to test your CL mechanics, even if you want to go 6-slot and not use the event damage CE. So I'm writing this before I check my archival footage, but it seems like the kinda node where I went with a 6-slot Arquade at first, got walled by the mid-boss, got mad, and gonged it. The answer, I presume, is obvious to you guys based on what footage I went with. Okay, so I went back and checked. All of my footage is of 6-slot runs. Both Arquade and Gong are doable at 120 full power, though some of the damage checks are tight. For Arc in particular, I'd recommend using Oberon skill 1 on turn 2 to give you better damage against that snake fucker. CL has a much easier time of it in general, but if you don't feel like malding or using any of these high-end attackers, or putting a billion grails in a Chen Gong, just use Superb Vista's Sublime Artistry and settle for a 5-slot clear. Now let's set up the challenge quest. This is a battle against a 2-bar Bunny Toria hiding behind the Knights of the Round Table. For fun, I tried to run a somewhat low econ team with mysterious Ranmaru X, and it's pretty doable, assuming you max limit break the event damage CE. The fight starts with Lancelot popping a taunt, which won't matter because you're going to nuke the board. Gawain has very high resistances to NPs and crits for 3 turns, so you'll have to contend with him for a while. It's possible to fuck him up with non-crit normal cards, but it's a huge pain. While he's on the field, Gawain is really hellbent on being a nuisance. His attacks force you to rent beach accessories from him. These are buffs on paper, but servants who have them do even less damage to him and his allies. To mitigate this threat, I'd rent taunt CEs if you have any, Outrage and Poster Girl in particular. Give these to a throwaway support like Zhu Fu and have her eat all the rentals. Then she can die along with her credit score. Another little trick I found to fend Gawain off is to crowd control him with something like Ranmaru's Charm or the stun from the Chaldea combat uniform. Bunny Toria won't show up until all the other knights are defeated. She can obtain all the gimmicks of her minions, and horrifyingly, that includes Gawain's rental system. Another really bad one she can roll is the one she takes from Gareth, which lets her move up to 3 additional times every turn. On top of this, she has an effect to remove 1 defensive buff when she attacks, once per turn. When you break her bar, she cleanses debuffs and changes her current ability, as far as I could tell. As for what ability she gets, she seems to favor Tristan's charge acceleration in her first phase and Gareth's bonus actions in her second, but she gets much more random if you leave her alive long enough to roll multiple gifts. To get through the Roundtable Knights, I'd recommend using an AoE attacker supplemented with the taunt/stun strategy I mentioned earlier. While you could go all in on the stun angle and run someone like Van Gogh, I'd be careful if you take this route. Mordred's gimmick is debuff immunity. Not such a big deal if you're fighting Mordred, but if Pops manages to roll it, you're fucked. In terms of really good attackers, Summer Musashi can stop Gawain from making any headway on his Noble Phantasm, and Space Aresh can build up power in a potentially long fight like this. And Summer Ibuki is a very strong beat stick as usual. If you want to grind it out, Morgan has anti-Roundtable Knight damage, and she can work in the Immortal team. But this squad really wants to avoid a situation where Bunny Toria gets Gareth's bonus actions. Factor in her defensive buff removal, and I'd personally avoid doing this, though it is possible. What I found in the Ranmaru run is that it also helps to deploy an Anchor Servant with Guts. I picked Bond CE Heracles for noob strats, and he worked remarkably well here. His active Guts can't be purged by Bunny Toria, since Guts isn't treated as a defensive buff for some reason. That and whenever one of his stacks are popped, Artoria's turn ends, regardless of how many bonus actions she has. If you have her, Taira no Kagekiyo is also quite good for this role. Thanks for watching, lads. Like if you found this video helpful, subscribe for more, and come on Twitch, twitch.tv/Finotaisen, where I stream every week, 3 PM Pacific time. This week I'm doing CL rolls on both Wednesday and Sunday on my Mistaken main accounts respectively. I've also got Pokemon Moon on Friday and Mecha Chameleon on Saturday, so stop by for some laughs, some tears, and a lot of wasted money. See you there.